Hello to all of our guests and attendees. Welcome to Modernize's webinar, Weathering the Off-Season, where today we'll be presenting and discussing our latest homeowner insights, which came in the form of a survey, and how you can use these to your advantage. We have three fabulous speakers with us today who I'd like to introduce. The first is Modernize's very own Chris Pelletroni. Chris is the co-founder of Modernize and an industry leader and veteran. If you tuned in to us in August for our webinar, he was a panelist and is also a fixture of our podcast, which we'll talk about at the end. Next, I'd like to introduce Greg Hicks. Greg is the vice president of Modernize and has more than 20 plus years of experience in the home improvement industry. He was also on our webinar in August and is just a really fabulous resource for our team. And lastly, I would love to introduce James McClister, who is an award-winning journalist and managing editor of Pro Remodeler magazine. I am Cassie Morian. It's really nice to meet everyone. I am your moderator for today. I am Modernize's senior content strategist, which is just a very fancy way of saying words go through me, and the lead homeowner insights analyst. If you are new to Modernize, just a very brief introduction. For more than 15 years, Modernize has been a leader in the home improvement and services industry. Our job is connecting homeowners to contractors and professionals so they can get their job done. We operate in more than 15 high-value, high-consideration home and segments, including window replacements, solar installation, roofing, HVAC, siding, bathrooms, kitchens, you name it. We were recently acquired by Quinn Street, Inc., who's a pioneer in delivering online marketplace solutions to match searchers with brands in digital media. Thanks for being here. We also wanted to give a little bit of a space to talk about an upcoming event from our friends at Pro Remodeler.
Yeah, just a quick, you guys. The Extreme Lead Generation, it's an event we put on every single course this year. We've had to switch to virtual. But after our recent Extreme Sales Summit, virtual summit that we just had, a huge success.
Oh, looks like we're experiencing some technical difficulties. James, if you can hear us, it is glitched just momentarily. We'll give it a second to see if we can hear you. Okay, we'll get that figured out. Technical difficulties in 2020. To just expand briefly on it, so there's an upcoming 3-day virtual event from our friends at Pro Remodeler. It is transitioned to a virtual format, and they're going to have some really unique opportunities for Q&A from the audience, networking, and friendly games and prizes. You can learn more on their website. James is gone, but he'll be back, I promise. So we're going to get started talking about these exciting conversions or conversations and results. This is a brief agenda of what we'll cover today. We want to be really transparent about our homeowner survey methodology, and then we'll dive into our homeowner survey insights, talk about marketing to new prospects during this holiday season, and then remarketing to cold leads during the winter, pun intended. Okay, so about our Modernize's homeowner surveys. So every week we survey thousands of homeowners across the United States. And we do this to learn more about their pain points and project preferences. And then we like to share that with our contractors and our audience so you can do your jobs better and with more confidence. The data we're going to show you today was compiled from September and October of 2020. And all in all, more than 5,000 surveys were completed from homeowners. All right, so let's discuss them. So COVID has disrupted every aspect of our lives, both personal and professional, and no industry more so than the travel industry. We're quickly approaching the holiday season, as we know, and normally this is a time of really intense travel and spending for Americans. In our construction industry, in most regions, hi, James, welcome back. His audio is getting connected. Thanks, team. In our construction industry, usually 9 months out of the year, we are thriving, and the winter usually allows us to like catch our breath and is considered the slowest time of year. Homeowners, on the other hand, are distracted. They aren't home. They often need to pause and cancel their projects. They're spending their money on presents. But this year will be like no other. In 2019, AAA predicted a record-breaking 115 million Americans would travel during the holiday season. But today, the Center for Disease Control is recommending that Americans stay home to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Panelists, are any of you traveling for the holiday season? I know we're scattered across the United States.
Not this year. Gonna skip it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I had a trips planned, one to Peru, one to Ireland. So these are going to be like huge, awesome, once in a lifetime trips, and they were both canceled, unfortunately. But better safe than sorry.
Yes, yes. It looks like Chris Palatroni is also having some technical issues. He will be right back, but he told me before this started that he's also not traveling and he's based in California. So for our listeners, our hypothesis was simple. With homeowners changing their holiday plans, will that also change if they're changing their holiday plans, will they also change their home improvement plans this winter? And we're thrilled to share those results. So we learned that the vast majority of homeowners, 76% across trades, will not be traveling this holiday season. To break this down even further, 5% said they would travel their normal amount. 3% said they would travel less than they did previously. 2% will travel more. And 14% at the time of the survey were still undecided. For us at Modernize, this quickly sparked our next question, which was, if homeowners aren't traveling, would they begin or continue to improve their homes? And we found out that yes. So 55% of homeowners across trades plan to begin or continue home improvement project plans this holiday season. And to break that down further for our audience, 28% plan to pursue exterior projects. We're talking roof replacement or siding, just large scale outdoor projects. 10% plan to pursue interior projects, and 17% plan to pursue both. Panelists, do any of you want to chime in here? Are you surprised by these insights, knowing that winter usually is our slowest season?
Yeah, Cassie, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Oh, perfect. I would say traditionally for anybody that's been in the home improvement space, I would say, it tends to get fairly quiet, once again, on average, past Thanksgiving, for a lot of natural reasons, right? There's just so many relatives coming into town and Christmas parties we got to go to and all that good stuff. So I'd say historically, I would expect there to be a little bit of a downturn in some regard. I'm not surprised this year, though. We're just not traveling as much. There's just less Christmas parties to go to. And so I think for those reasons, the traditional excuses or rationale that homeowners had for maybe not partaking in a project at this time, those have definitely been curbed. And I think it really allows for an opportunity to, get more projects done at a time that historically they may not have. So not surprised this year.
Thank you, Chris.
And Cassie, can you hear me?
I can, James, yes.
Oh, excellent. Sorry, it cuts out at the most inopportune times usually. One thing I'm particularly not surprised about this year especially is that exterior projects are so popular, or at least anticipated to be so popular. When we have an economic crisis, we tend to see remodeling is a little bit more resistant. And what we see is that projects don't necessarily, but they do shift to smaller projects. And obviously with the pandemic, remodelers outside their house can be. And so the fact that exterior projects are so much more anticipated than interior projects is surprising to me at all.
Thank you. Thank you for these insights. The home improvement sector has been doing remarkably well this year, while a lot of other industries have really kind of collapsed as homeowners, take on more DIY and professional projects. We wanted to share this stat. So this is from a study in June 2020 from a consumer specialist report that examined homeowners' high interest in home improvement projects. And in their study, they found that 67% of homeowners said that the reason they're pursuing more projects this year is simply because they have more time to address their home's needs, which again is why we're looking at this winter season with a new lens. And while time is important, so is money. We wanted to find out exactly how much homeowners wanted to spend this holiday season. That's really critical to understanding all this. How much money do they want to invest in their homes? 48% of homeowners in our survey plan to spend between $1,001 and $10,000 on their home improvement projects this holiday season immediately approaching. Another 11% plan to spend more than $10,000. I wanted to note, this is in our ebook, as are all of these stats, but in 2019, NerdWallet did a big feature on holiday spending, and they predicted that 45% of Americans use cash on flights and hotels during the holiday season when they're traveling. And they broke this down per traveler, and they predicted that every person would spend around, exactly $1,393. And so again, I think the really unique thing to note here is that without plane tickets and travel expenses and Airbnbs, homeowners are looking to immediately just invest that gift back into their homes and themselves. Which led to our next question. We know how much homeowners want to spend. How are they going to pay for these projects? So 39% of homeowners surveyed said they're going to pay for their projects with cash, or plan to pay for their projects with cash. And then 26% said that they will seek financing and loans. 17% will use credit cards, and 18% said they'll use other means, which they listed as payment plans or insurance claims. We followed up here with the homeowner specifically that said they wanted to seek financing or loans to see how much they wanted to finance. 96% of the homeowners who selected this would like to finance 50 or more % of their projects, with 67% seeking to finance the entire project. For our fabulous panelists, we consistently see interest from our homeowners around financing their large-scale projects. Why is this so important to note for our audience today?
Well, I think, Cassie, from my perspective, I see financing increasingly becoming a part of the homeowner's expectation as something that a contractor will be able to either provide guidance towards a solution there. And so for me, I really think about this for our contractor audience as a really great way to, number one, speak to a homeowner's need. Number two, create bigger project sizes, right? So if we can finance them, we tend to push our boundaries and compromise less and get the exact project that we were envisioning. And then I think the third thing, and perhaps most important, is if you're solving this opportunity, it's a great closing tool, right? It's something that's going to help you get that homeowner in real time to commit to the project. Because, as opposed to this all sounds great, let me go figure out financing and I'll circle back. If we can make that all part of our process as contractors, we're much more likely to get bigger projects that close more quickly. So I love this data.
Yeah,
Greg.
And I think Greg said a really nice thing at the tail end there, if you didn't catch it. I'm going to reword the words just a little bit. Remove the friction. Anything we can do to remove friction in the buying process, and this would be true with anything, right? Go to any place, be it a restaurant or buy something online. We're trying to make it easier for people to go from I want something to I have something. And certainly the easier you can make that, a click of a button, hey, don't worry about that, let me just take this piece of information, and voila, that bridges a lot of confidence with consumers, and it kind of removes some of those barriers. So once again, they may not need it, but putting it out there just removes the friction. So good point, Greg.
James, I think you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Oh. So to give Greg a little bit more praise too, when he first started speaking, he mentioned that education, and just like newer technology, the ability to finance a project for remodeler is becoming now a sign of credibility, because our market is optimizing and you need to have these tools. So if you don't, it's sort of going to be a hit to you.
Thank you so much, all of our panelists, for. Yeah, go ahead.
And I would just, sorry, Cassie, I would also add, and if you don't, Modernize has several resources available that we're happy to collaborate with you on to help solve that opportunity for you.
Perfect. Yes, we'll talk about more at the very end, our resources, but we do try to make, if you are looking into financing options for your homeowners, we have some partners and resources available. So I admittedly blew through those stats as fast as possible, because I'd really like to spend the majority of this webinar discussing how contractors can market to these homeowners this holiday season, secure this rare off business, knowing all of these stats. So we're going to talk pretty extensively about marketing in the off season. I'm going to kick it off with leading with local. So we have learned consumers are spending their money locally, and I say we, not meaning just Modernize. So in April 2020, Accenture released a really detailed report on the pandemic's impact on consumer behavior. They reported that 80% of consumers feel more or as connected to their communities during COVID. And this trend is really predicted to stay long after this really difficult time is over. I wanted to share this stat really notably from the Accenture report, that they really stress that brands need to explore ways to connect locally. They need to customize for local needs and engage in locally relevant ways. And I think for our contractors, that's really important. So in our survey, we followed up with homeowners and said, how would you prefer to pick a contractor? And we learned 85% of homeowners would prefer a local business to a bigger brand. So the first question I'd really like to open up to our fabulous panelists is, how can contractors highlight and best position their business?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. The first thing, obviously I had a chance to take a peek at this beforehand. I think being authentic is a really big thing, Cassie. I do think you're on that, like a local business, if positioned correctly, I do think speaks a little bit more to the heart of a local, but that's true with anything, right? The yogurt you buy, the windows you put in your house. But I do think you need to be authentic. If you are a local company, and most companies that even have a larger footprint across the US, most of it tends not to be a satellite office. A lot of it tends to be a local presence on the ground. They're hiring a local person, right? They're hiring local people. So if you have that type of presence, I would say be authentic, make it known, right? We all go through the same things in communities. I know here out in Northern California, there's been lots of fires over the years. Sonoma Strong's a real thing out here in Sonoma County. I know it's different across the nation. So I think if you can speak the local language, it definitely gives you a little bit of access to their heart. But keep in mind, like that's just maybe getting a seat at the table. People may prefer local businesses, but that doesn't always mean that they're going to use them. You still have to have good call to actions and obviously a good presentation.
One thing I've seen in modeling community, and I'll speak specifically about a company here in a second, is that weaving yourself community, not necessarily putting up flyers everywhere, but getting involved with the local chamber of commerce, getting involved with events. Tundraland, owned by Brian Gottlieb out of Appleton, Wisconsin, all kinds of charity events. Mile of Music is a music show they sponsor and put on every year for the community, and it's free. It's not really anything to do with remodeling, but you see the Tundraland sign everywhere, and all of a sudden Tundraland is just a noted part of your community. So when you think of home improvement, that's the first thing into your mind. So staying involved in the community will help emphasize how local you are. And that's also something that a bigger company can do, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I agree with that, James and Chris as well. I think from my perspective, it's never a surprise that homeowners, when they're in the early phases of a project, are going to start by, their network of friends, family, and neighbors, right? As to what's worked well, who do they know? But then as that phase and that process moves forward, I really encourage contractors, and to Chris's point was great, like you're all there on the ground, right? You can bring these local themes into your relationship with the homeowner, even if you're not a quote unquote local company. But just like layering on that expertise in a way that's helpful. I remember when I was talking to a contractor about an addition, and he was literally telling me, oh, in these 10 square blocks, you can expect to find this type of soil, right? Like, and I live in Portland, Oregon, and we need to be thinking about these types of weather factors, right? And just really embracing that local knowledge and bringing that into the conversation with the homeowner, I think gets at a lot of this data right here. Is yes, we all want to support local, and I think even more so during COVID. These are our neighbors, these are our tribe and our community, and we want to support them so we can all get through this together. But a lot of it is like that regional and that local expertise, and how does that come full circle to create a more successful project for me, the homeowner? Like, embrace all of that, bring it to the conversation, show your expertise. Been doing this work in this area for X amount of years, and really bring that forward as a way to differentiate yourself.
Thank you all. I'll chime into my background is social media in helping companies with their online presence. And I think this also with local in mind is like a really nice time for contractors to update their online materials. So you can tag different areas on Google and Yelp and the Better Business Bureau. To your point, Chris, talking about Sonoma Strong, there's a lot of local hashtags that can be leveraged in every area. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and we have, hashtag ATX, and then that can be paired with shop local or shop small to help people find your business, especially during the holiday season that's up and coming. I really appreciate all these great tips too.
Sorry, Cass, one thing, and it kind of blends into this, but I think a point that you made there is like, some of those things I think historically have been thought about through a retail lens. And I just think we should grab onto them and make them our own, right? Like, let's join that wave, like capture some of that social buzz and apply it to the home improvement industry. Like there's no rules that say we can't do that. And it's got such a good, again, just speaking from my local market, but knowing really across the country that has a lot of buzz and a lot of energy behind it. Like, let's capture that. Let's be a part of that as well.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you so much, all of our panelists. To continue this, how can national trusted bigger brands leverage this local information to make it applicable to them and still capture this homeowner interest?
So I'll take one if you don't mind, guys. When you're a bigger brand, yeah, you have this like big name recognition everyone's going to know, and maybe you feel a little bit detached because there's this big headquarters system that runs everything. But the branches, whether they be a franchise or just another branch of that particular company, they're still run by local people. The people who work there still live in the area. You can still leverage the same sort of locality by getting involved with your community, going online to social media, having conversations with people who comment on your post, hosting webinars like this. You can still involve yourself with the community to seem local, even if you're a national brand.
It's great. Thank you, James.
Yep, I think James nailed it. Making that connection obvious for the homeowner that, while you're a part of a bigger organization, you're very much a part of the community, and contextualizing that with, references to what's going on, referencing, even like where your kids are going to school or anything like that, just to really draw those strong lines of connection and just support the benefits. And I would, then look for ways to tie that local connection into the benefits of the bigger brand, right? And so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds from that perspective.
Thank you, Greg. Chris, I think
You're on mute.
There we go. The only other thing I would add into this, and I think there's some companies that do this really, really well. We're talking about using some like more local nomenclature, and I definitely think that speaks to the heart of locals. But when I think of what really moves the needle from a performance perspective, and we all want it, is we want a good experience. You want the phone call returned in a reasonable amount of my time, not your time. You know what I mean? Like we want a text message where applicable. We want a nice person on the phone. We want a prompt appointment that shows up on time, that calls if they're going to be late. Look, at the end of the day, there is a fair amount of singing and dancing we got to do. And, hey, prove that you want their business before you get their business. And so I think what really can separate a company, be it local or national, there definitely are differences amongst the two, but hey, create a good customer experience. I think if everybody relentlessly pursues that, be it local or national, that's a win for the consumer. So I would challenge anybody, I don't care how big you are, see who can create the best experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We wanted to note also on the local note that Small Business Saturday is November 28th. We still expect homeowners to be spending a lot of money during Black Friday and holiday shopping this year, and just something to be aware of. A lot of times during non-COVID years, we write about contractors offering seasonal discounts, off-seasonal discounts for homeowners to encourage them to do projects. This year, obviously, from these stats, things could look a little bit different. At Modernize, we asked homeowners what type of promotion is most appealing to them from contractors, just to kind of glean some more insights. And this is what we found. So 45% said they would prefer a discount on project materials or appliances. 22% said they prefer a discount on labor, and 33% said they would offer a discount on installation costs. We want to note that not every contractor or business can offer this, especially in this really incredibly difficult time. But to our panelists, how can contractors use this information?
Oh man, I'm going to jump in here, guys. I thought about how I would respond to this, and for the sake of creating a little controversy, I don't think you should give a discount. I really don't. I'm a little old school, but the way I was taught in the home improvement space is you never discount your contract, period, ever. If anything, add a little bit of value. So we were a painting company way back in the day. And so we would paint the inside or the outside of someone's house or stain decks. And so, if it came down to I needed a little bit more, hey, I'll paint your mailbox. Or hey, the shed in the backyard, I'll throw that in. Or hey, I'll put a coat on the bathroom on the inside. Add something and that will separate you more than taking some cost out, right? Cost is you remove cost. I don't care how you dice this thing up. Either you're making less money or you're cutting a corner. It's an equation. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not a big fan of any discount for anybody. I don't think consumers need it. Tell a good story, build a good experience, add value if you have to.
I'll chime in here if you don't mind. Chris, I completely agree with you. I never advocate for discounts. And I'll also say to the remodelers who are maybe a little bit worried that if they offer a discount, then, their homeowners who are going through a lot of stress will be difficult, right? What I hear from remodelers, and I've talked to quite a few, homeowners are being incredibly compassionate right now. They're going through a tough time, and they realize that companies are too. That customers by and large are more forgiving right now than they have been in the past. So I don't know that there's necessarily even a need for a discount to bring in customers.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And Chris, specifically, I think your point of view about throwing in something extra, that's what the homeowner is going to remember 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the road. Oh yeah, Chris just painted my shed, just threw it in. Not going to remember Chris knocked off 5% on his labor cost, right? It's those little extras But Cassie, to speak to the data for a minute, it doesn't surprise me that most homeowners are looking for the discount if one were to be offered on the materials or appliances. And my take is because that's where they can actually confirm that they're actually getting a discount. You know, you can go to Google and see how much you would pay and then compare that to what's in the estimate. So, you know, to be clear, I agree with James and Chris, like, you know, don't discount your services. But to speak to the data, like that makes sense to me because when I talk to homeowners, they're never sure, you know, I'm getting a discount on the labor. Is there really a discount or was it just built into the price initially? And then I'm just getting something that I should have gotten from the jump. Whereas the materials, it's kind of a little easier for the homeowner to wrap their head around or even do some research to see that they are getting some type of real discount.
Yeah, and
Greg,
guys,
you might. Oh, go on, Chris.
Yeah, one more thing, and I know there's just an infinite amount of contractors because I've spoken to them over the years that would probably argue, hey, but you know, the other guys in the market are doing it. Like I can't be competitive, and like I hear that. I have first world experience as a young guy in my 20s selling, and as a painting company, we were charging $5,000 to $10,000 a paint job, and I certainly was more expensive than the next guy. And I always had to be justify like, hey, I'm at 10,000, the next guy's at 5. Like, explain why you're twice as expensive. Like, I get it. It doesn't always make for a fun conversation, but there are very logical ways to explain it. And trust me, nobody wants to feel like you cut corners on their job. So I just think there's a lot of more effective ways to build value for a consumer. I don't think it's lowering price. So.
James, did you want to hop in again too? I just don't want to.
It's honestly just a quick plug for Pro Remodeler. Michael Anschel, who owns Atagawa Anschel Design Build. He recently penned an op specifically talking about the danger of discounts and how they can actually erode credibility for the remodeling industry. So if you have a chance, go check it out. It's called Free, 4-letter word. Very good.
Free is a 4-letter word. Thank you so much for that. I will absolutely be reading that. Thank you so much for all this. And I appreciate the opinion of not discounting your work. And I think at the end, we'll talk about the transparency into the bid and quote process, which I think is really, to Greg's point and Chris's point, what homeowners are looking for. And if you're able to say you're paying more for this brand that, you know, we recommended that you selected because you're going to get more longevity out of it and our service and our team, that's really what homeowners care about. So let's talk about remarketing. So we talked about engaging these new interested homeowners, but now I'd like to shift to remarketing to cold leads. So homeowners that you previously were engaged with and now have gone quiet. So we know often homeowners need to pause or cancel a project. Sometimes it's because of cost, sometimes the timing just isn't quite right, but they go silent. You're waiting on them for next steps. This seems, based on our data, like a really unique time and opportunity to follow up. Panelists, do you agree?
I'm going to try not to get...
I
James, you go first this time, buddy.
Well, I feel, any time is a good time to follow up with your customers. It doesn't have to be something serious. It could just be like a quick email. This in particular, I feel, is a really good built-in excuse, meaning the pandemic, to just call and check up. I would say, though, if you're reaching out to your customers, hopefully you have some demo data on them. Not everyone wants to be called. As a millennial, I feel like I'm in the generation that I don't want to be called. Like, I will not answer your call if I don't really know you. So don't call me. You can send me an email or maybe a piece of direct mail and I'll check it out for a second and then toss it to the side, but it'll stick in my mind. But just ask if people are dry. You don't even need to bring up remodeling necessarily. You can just ask them about how they're doing in this time, just to get in their mind.
Sure. So I'd like to break this down by like 3 different types. To your point, James, like everyone likes to be contacted slightly differently. So discussing it by channel, the first being email. So let's say a homeowner has stopped responding to either direct, like personal email that you've sent, or they've stopped engaging with your weekly newsletters or blasts. What should contractors do this holiday season to follow up with homeowners via email?
We should have a nurturing campaign. I always find these questions. I mean, I think they're so insightful because we all get to this point of like, what's too much, right? Like, how persistent should I be? I learned this the hard way as a contractor. I made a lot of assumptions on people that didn't respond to me, whether it was email or phone call. And I can't tell you, I was always so shocked at the rational reason that they had behind not getting back to me. I was like, well, of course, why would you have gotten back to me? You're a single mom during the week. Like, it makes total sense. Like, your dog died. Like, I wouldn't be painting my house. Like, and what I realized is that, and a contractor said it best to me, he was a roofing contractor, and I asked him the same question, and it cuts to the core of the point of, when do you stop pursuing somebody for a roofing? And he's like, when they have a new roof on their house.
Amazing.
You don't stop, period. Like, if they ask you to stop, you stop. And if they have a new window, roof, paint job, patio, fence, whatever, you stop. Until then, you let technology and nurturing campaigns do for you what they're supposed to do for you. Now, to make that work, though, you got to get good at your database. You know, we all pride ourselves in, hey, you know, the life of my blood is referrals and stuff. And I think it is for all good contractors. But hey, at the end of the day, going back to that experience, and I say this on every podcast, webinar, I mean, she's siloed contractors, conversations with contractors, like, map out the journey. Take the biggest wall in your office and sketch out what you expect to happen. Not one day when I have more money, better systems, more people. Like, what do you expect to happen today? The phone rings. How is that experience going to start off? How quickly? What are you going to say? What happens if they don't respond? When you figure that out, I don't want to dismiss the weather in the off season, but that's like saying, like, all of a sudden I got hungry. Where do I go get food? Stock your fridge with food before you get hungry. So anyways, I could go off on this topic all day. It's a great one. Your specific question was email. I think I answered that, be it email or phone. Like, you stop when they ask you to stop is when you stop. So.
Yeah. And I would say, especially, you know, COVID times, right? I think I talk to homeowners that have every intention, and they're staring at the project that they want to do every day. They're living in it. But, you know, now more than ever, like, weeks can get derailed in a blink of an eye, whether you're, you know, solving a new daycare matrix, or you are, you know, just thinking through the decisions that you need to do to keep you and your family safe, or kind of safe as you are comfortable with. I mean, I think the conversations that are happening in the house these days are exhausting, right? And so a lot of times the projects are still intended, but they're just not at the top of the list. And so I think, again, like, to Chris's point, like, work those nurturing campaigns. You know, I think continue to follow up until the project is done, or until you get asked, you know, to add them to your unsubscribe list. You know, and I think I also always feel like there's a pivot point, right? When you go from following up on a specific project to then kind of, like, if there's some threshold where you feel like you need to back off of that and then pivot into just kind of more informational updates as the way to stay in front of the homeowner, you know, local events or local news or other projects that I completed in your neighborhood. Like, at some point it does make sense to maybe follow up or to back off the specific, the estimate or the bid that you're chasing, and just kind of pivot into more of an informational campaign. You know, and I think each project and contractor needs to navigate that for themselves, but don't stop. You've got to continue to stay in front of them.
Well, but that's where it gets intentional, right, Greg? I mean, like, and this is why I say put it on a wall. You guys think I'm joking. I've only seen one contractor in all my travels literally have this on a 50-foot wall, but here's why it makes so much sense, right? We're all familiar with the saying, out of sight, out of mind. That's a real thing. We are visual people. I don't care your preference and how you learn. If you don't see something consistently, you don't think of it consistently. Here's the other thing I know to be true as well. When you put something like that on a wall, something as important as how are we going to treat every potential customer that comes through our door, I would argue that's like liquid gold, right? I mean, you do that right, like you make gold bars. You do that wrong, it slips through the cracks. And so by putting it on the wall or some representation like that, you get to see, hey, Greg, like once we book the job over here, well, why don't we have anything that follows up with the homeowner like after we do the work? Like we don't send a Christmas card? Like Cassie's not going to get a Christmas card from us? well, that seems silly. Like, you know, and I've had that happen. Like I was saying the other day, I had a local guy, you know, and I've gotten to know the president, and, you know, over the course of a couple of years, I kicked him $50,000 worth of business. It wasn't huge. I'm not going to make or break this guy's company. But when I got back into his office 6 months after those events had happened, we're talking about lead nurturing. And I said, hey, I didn't get a Christmas card. And I was like, yeah, here I am, a customer who spent $50,000 with you. For all you know, my mom's waiting to get something done. Like, so the visual representation, although it seems a little silly, it makes it very obvious what your intentions are as an organization. And that is really where you start to improve performance. But if you don't see it, hey, maybe it's getting done, maybe it's not.
No, I really appreciate all of this. And we have two other verticals to talk about. I'm going to be a little bit cheeky and play my very creative card, just to give a couple of little insights to our listeners that I know from my marketing background. And that is, I think we're in this winter season really uniquely positioned to address a lot of different topics, and by email specifically. So I believe Albuquerque got a foot of snow earlier this week. We have a hurricane cutting up through Louisiana and now heading to the Northeast. There's a lot of weird weather happening, and I think it could be a really nice time to send content around winterizing your home, looking after storm damage, preparing your home for the season ahead. I think homeowners are really looking for those kind of tips, and that's hopefully you're not reinventing the wheel. You can share resources from partners or news articles you found that are really relevant to your audience. We've seen strength if it's Cassie's remodeling and you're sending emails, if you switch it to a person's name, that usually gets opened more statistically. So if you're getting an email from Cassie Morian, you're more likely to feel like, oh, this is a person trying to interact with me. So that's like a little subtle change you could make to your nurture campaigns. And the last one, which we all know to be true, but hopefully is a nice reminder, is mobile first all the time. So while we're updating our websites and creating emails online, people are usually reading them on the phone. Even I, who have double screens, I'm checking email on my phone. So we know from Constant Contact's recent results, 62% of Americans are using their phones. And so just keep that in mind when you are creating emails, that they're not super long and lengthy.
Yeah, one other thing I'm going to plug in real quick there, and I wish I had a nice place to steer everybody towards, but I can't emphasize the importance of the way you use your words when you reach out to people. Be it the messages you do when you qualify people and the sequence. So not just the words, but the way in which they're sequenced throughout the conversation, what questions you lead with. You always have to think from a consumer first perspective. You know, a good practical tactic I would give is, you know, I would always encourage contractors, you know, on that first phone call, like the homeowner wants to schedule an appointment more often than not. There may be some questions that need to get filtered, but typically we're calling because they're like, hey, I need somebody out of my house. Take a look at this. Give them the appointment, like pick the day, pick the time, get them excited. Like, great, I'm almost off the phone, and then hit them with a qualifying question if you need to. But I would encourage, and whether you outsource it to a content person or bring somebody in, get somebody that's good with words. Like, get somebody that can craft good stuff. It does not have to be complex. It just has to be humanized. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of email marketing out there that's just crap. And it's just because, like, sure, it's like opening up a jacket and saying which watch you want. Like, I don't feel special. I know Greg's not going to feel special off that. So, like, hey, you don't need to know like my inner secrets and like the name of my cat, but like, do a better job. Pretend like you know me a little bit, right? Like, especially if we've interact, right? Hey, Greg, we gave you an estimate last year. I heard you want somebody else. I hope that's holding up. Did you know we also do X, Y, Z? Or, hey, we're going to be back. Like, I don't know, but like, spend time putting a lot of thought into the word you use, and don't think more is more. Less is more.
I love that.
I agree with that. Just slightly different. I think I tell this to my team at Modernize all the time, is think about when you send your emails too, right? Like I could tell people that are just trying to cross something off their list at work when I get an email at 5:30 on a Friday. And literally just last week, I told somebody, I was like, no one's reading those emails. Like, you have missed your window. You need to, if you're that close to getting something out last thing on a Friday, and this is through our workplace environment, but it's relevant, pivot, hold that, queue it up, hit send first thing or a couple hours into Monday, when everyone's got they're caffeinated and they're ready for the week. Like, don't send that email last thing on a Friday. Same thing for us as contractors. You want to think about when people are reading their email. Obviously, to Cassie's point, we're reading our email on our phone, but when is that, right? And so I think it's kind of during the meat of the day, in my experience. Not the first thing in the morning, but it's more like when we're settled and we've kind of got a handle on what's going on, maybe from 10 to 1 p.m. or something like that. If you can triangulate around when you think people are actually reading your email, because that's the other thing, we're competing for that real estate in the inbox, right? And without question, things just get pushed to the bottom. And once you're out of the first page, you may or may not get open. You probably won't. So try to think about and hit people when they're more ready to receive email.
That's a good point.
And to that point, if you have the ability, I'm analyzing your data as much as possible. I mean, because there's some logic behind the initial campaign, but once you start sending it out, you can then seeing what times do work. A/B test your stuff. Split your list in half. Send one in Monday morning. Send one in Monday afternoon. See which one does better.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Literally perfect. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here, so I just wanted to thankfully for all of your expertise. James, you alluded to this earlier, just being a millennial and how we're communicating. We have found through our homeowner surveys that more than 50% of homeowners would prefer to communicate with their contractor via text message. So for homeowners that have stopped picking up their phone previously, like you're not actively calling them now, are there any unique tips to share going into, again, this winter to encourage our contractor base to just give them a quick text or a call? I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Sorry, I thought you were asking James, but no, I'll jump in.
Those people, yes.
Yeah, no, I think this is just the way that the industry is moving, right? And one quick legal, let's always make sure we have consent to text folks. I know every kind of shameless plug, but at Modernize we take consent very seriously, and we'll not distribute a lead that doesn't have full consent to interact with the homeowners however you want to, whether that's text or email or phone. But legalese aside, I think this is how we need to be interacting with our customer base now. And it's a great way, and I think to nurture the relationship and drive any lingering doubts or open questions, like solve that real time. And I think the challenge is like moving this one into some type of automated process as well, right? Because I think the value in texting is like getting somewhat of a real-time response and asking unique questions and getting specific answers as the homeowner. So I think the challenge is, how do we as contractors recognize this as the opportunity, but not have to be chained to our phones personally to solve the problem. I think that's the opportunity here.
Yeah, and for everybody listening, I mean, I know there's so many contractors out there that just don't even leverage text message. Like, I was playing around, I think a couple months ago, and I was just so baffled by it. I was like, I mean, some big clients, and to your guys' points, it's just a missed opportunity. Think of it like this, and I think Greg said it, is we are competing for consumers' attention. Okay. Now, that is true. And if you look at it just at a macro, it's like, okay, only so much time in a day, but there's different layers of attention too, right? Like there's, think of like the phone game, right? And I'll use James as an example. James said, hey, I'm a millennial. I'm not answering my phone. So if everybody plays ball at the phone game level to get James's business, it's not going to be very effective. And you're sure, who cares if you compete with 1 million companies? James not answering his phone. And so the value of a text message, and you don't always know everybody's preference. I'll touch on that in a second. But the idea is like, how do you cast different lines in the water? right? So the most prominent ones, and I would say until, a little bit far off in the future, you have to play ball at the phone game level. I would say that's like a must. Like you can't give that up yet. You absolutely need to be involved in text. And if you don't know how to do it, like just hire a company that does it. There's plenty of companies that are out there that specialize in this. And it doesn't need to be everything at once. It could just be like, hey, I got this one source. Let's test it out. Dip your toe in the water. You've got email as well. You'd be surprised at how many companies don't have an auto email set up, right? For those people that want to tap into that. So I think there's an element of you're trying to guess, right? Does the homeowner want a direct mail piece? Should I send a messenger pigeon over to their house? Like, we don't really know which one it's going to be. However, what I would say is like, okay, if that's bothersome to you and you'd like to be more effective, well, great. Well, just put the question on your web form. Hey, Cassie, how would you like us to reach out to you? We're going to tell you, because like, I personally don't want a phone call. I'm not a millennial, but I kind of teeter on that. And it's like, I don't have time. Like, I got phone calls I got to hop on. You might call me right when I'm done. I'm really good with text and I'm really good with email. And if I know you, I'll call you. So we all have these different preferences. Just ask the person, hey, Greg, like, how would you like me to interact with you? Hit a phone number and like, just interact on his terms and build it out. This goes back to that wall I was talking about. Put it on the wall, right? If homeowner wants text, how do we support that? You got to meet people on their terms. And once again, if you choose not to do these things, it's not that all the business in the world is going to shrink up. It's just to say you're going to miss segments of the market that just don't want to operate and be put into a box.
Thank you guys so much. I'm going to move us to our final section because I think the tips you gave there were just perfect. So thank you for your expertise. But setting your company apart from your competition, Chris, which I know you're just discussing. So these stats, I have two stats, are actually from our recent fall homeowner survey. So if you're with us in our webinar in August, we touched on this a little bit, but these results are from 12,000 homeowners that we surveyed. And so the first is like, after price, how to impress homeowners and how they can stand out from the crowd. If my panelists want to discuss that a little bit.
I got cut off just from technical difficulties, so I'll start. So what I would say is one of the big things, especially this season, is to just not be silent. A lot of companies that are trying to trim their budgets to be incredibly lean moving into a season where, yes, we have this anticipation of remodeling surge and like work still going on. But if the pandemic kind of rages out of control, as some people, fear that it may, then you're going to have to, sit on some capital and you're going to have to deal with some lower work. But one thing I would say is do not cut your main budget. Stay in front of people, let people know that you're still community, you're still out there working, you're doing your best. And even if you're not working, still stay, because eventually the market will return and you want to be front of mind. And I would also say, to go back to marketing, a lot of remodelers I've talked to are getting great deals on radio and TV advertisements right now, because people are pulling their marketing dollars from those things, because that's the first to go. And they've proven to be pretty effective so far.
Thank you, James.
I think the thing that jumps out on me is like the expertise, right? That doesn't surprise me. I think the way to kind of combine that into this off season is, from a homeowner perspective, a lot of times, it's not just the holidays. I know homeowners a lot of times think that certain projects can't be done at certain times in the year, right? And so I think they just kind of naturally assume like, oh, I can't do my roof at this time of the year, or, windows or whatever the project is. And that's where, as the experts, we need to educate the homeowner of like, no, it actually can be done. And this is exactly how I would do it. There may be a couple of unique use cases that I need to solve for, but that's not stopping us from being able to replace your roof or switch out some windows, during the winter, right? It's still a time when we do lots of business. Again, maybe, a way to differentiate yourself is, how do you solve for the weather as you're doing some of those things? But I think educating the homeowner of why these projects are still totally in bounds and safe to do during the off season is a good way to kind of cut through some of the preconceived notions that the homeowners have of when projects can be done.
Yeah, that's so true. We assume things, right, Greg? And they become our own reality.
Yeah.
No surprise, guys. I'm going to come back to my wall here. But when I think of how do you weather an off season, it's like if you're ready, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And look, man, we talked about this at the beginning of COVID. How do you weather COVID? How do you weather the winter? Soon we'll be talking about how do you weather Q1. Like my point being is that like every company that I've ever talked to, generating leads, which is another way of saying generating sales, is a top 3 issue all the time. It never stops. It's just whether it's your first one or not, right? Labor is going to be up there, installation is going to be up there, and generating leads. And so I think the best thing anybody can do, and we touched on this with being local and pricing and whatnot, is take a minute to stop and just determine like what is your intention as a business, not just to generate revenue, but to what extent do you want to participate in the community? To what extent do you want to differentiate yourself from your competitors? How good do you want to make that customer journey or experience? Like this isn't meant to be go off for 2 weeks and do all the strategic planning, but I'm saying like take a minute to slow down and say, hey man, these are the expectations we have. You want to how you separate yourself from other people is be consistent. It flows through your character as a company. That starts with the vision of a leader and the way he treats his employees, which then gives the power to treat the customer. Like this isn't complicated. But I do think it starts with having a little bit of clarity at the top of like, what exactly are we trying to accomplish? It doesn't mean a bunch of bucks. I would argue everything I just said is a lot like a bucket. Okay. Think of it like a bucket. I'm saying fill your holes in your bucket. Now, it doesn't mean that there can't be a couple little cracks, but make sure there's not like a glaring hole on the bottom, right? Because if there is, guess what? It doesn't matter how much money you spend on marketing. You're going to pour it through. Some will stay in the bucket, and if you pour faster, it will stay longer, but it eventually will all seep out. I want to sell companies a lot of leads. I want to help them grow, but man, fix your bucket. This is some simple stuff. Don't put Band-Aids on it. So I think if you just get a little bit more intentional with that, put some stuff on your wall. I'd love to see pictures. If anybody ever takes us to the point where they're going to build a wall of their customer experience, send a picture to Modernize. We'd love to see it. But I think if you do those things, you are different than your competitors. And you don't have to try. That's just who you are.
I love that, Chris. I'm going to ideally let you continue maybe for a second. Our last stat and slide is on the flip side, like what not to do. And so again, this is from our previous homeowner survey of what attributes made homeowners least likely wanting to hire a contractor, with the top of that being an unclear or confusing bid and then lack of communication.
I mean, I'll say a little piece here and then I'll kick it over to the other guys here. When I saw this slide, I can't help but think all the things we said are applicable, but let's be honest. At the end of the day, there's a salesperson that is trying to sell to a homeowner. That homeowner, yes, they're going to choose your company, but that salesperson has a huge influence, right? And so I know it's not easy to find salespeople, and this is why I go back to the way you treat your staff and your people. I'm a big proponent in my company of, hey, like, are you okay as a person? Like, how can I help you as a human being? The work is going to come next, right? If we have happy people in our company, they're going to do great work. They don't need me to help them do the great work. I'm here to just make sure that I'm doing everything I can to support them as a person. And it's the same thing for our sales team. Like, I'm like, don't sell contractors. Find out what goals they have and see if we can help them. I would tell a contractor the same thing. Find out what the intents are of the homeowner and be genuine as to whether you can help that. Don't try to push a product. Don't try to push a higher sale. Like I know our job's to make money and keep the business going, but man, you generate so much more sales by just doing what is right for the homeowner. And so it's a hard thing, but if you can take that leap and just like try to distill that into your salespeople and just, hey, do what's right for the homeowner at all costs. I was a painting company. I did this as well. I'd ask you, what's your reason? And if it didn't make sense to me, I'd say, Cassie, don't paint your house. That's just silly. Why would you give me $7,000? Like, wait a couple more years. Like, you know what I mean? So just, yeah, I'll pass it over to these guys, but yeah, make sure you treat your salespeople right.
Yeah. Closing, anything else, Greg or James, you want to chime in on? I want to be really mindful of time. This is our last like meat slide, but then I'll close us out.
I'll just say one quick thing is that I think those top 3 reasons all boil down to communication. So that, and I think it's just exactly what Chris is saying, like, remove the friction, empower the sales folks, but, an unclear quote, lack of communication, lack of experience, all those things can be addressed with better communication with the homeowner.
I would also emphasize sales training. I think like you sort of need a replicatable process, and whether that means a script or whether that means you just have a good sales training system and you have a good sales process down, I would say go hard after that. When it comes to unclear or confusing quote or bid, I am a strong advocate of full transparency. And when I say full transparency, I mean line by line expenses, not a big overhead expense. And then I feel like customers these days really want it explained. And from a lot of remodelers who have sort of embraced that mindset, they have found success with it. So I would also recommend that.
Thank you so much to all three of our panelists, Greg, Chris, and James. You make my job a joy. So thank you for sharing so much of your expertise. For our audience, just to close up, you will be receiving our latest ebook called Weathering the Off-Season that has all of these stats and tips and more included. That will be in your email. We also have 2 other ebooks that we've recently published. These are free resources we create for our contractors to make your life easier. And we have recently at Modernize launched a podcast called Built Better. Chris Palatroni is our fabulous expert on there, and it's available for free on Spotify and iTunes. If you're driving to job sites or just weathering this winter, we hope you tune in and give us a listen. And if you have any other questions, we'd love to learn more. We'd love to talk to you. Please email us at modmail@modernize.com. Thank you all for your time today. This will be available online as well. Thank you again to our panelists, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
And thank you to you, Cassie. You did a great job.
Thank you, team.